well-established rich coming right back at you. Sometimes the most controversial thing you can do is tell the truth about how you really feel. Not the truth people want to hear, but the truth that grew inside of you over time. And that's exactly what happened when LaRussell spoke on Lil Wayne. He ain't disrespect him, but he ain't worship him either. He said when he was younger, Wayne felt different. But now that he's older, he hears his lyrics in a different way. Not because Wayne changed, but because he changed.
I had grew a disdain for Wayne just because I started listening to everything. Like, I started maturing as a human, and I'm like, damn, this nigga wasn't talking about nothing for a long time. And
I think that's what his argument was.
You know, like, as someone who, like, grew up in these communities and grew up with homies who I seen want to be bloods because they following Wayne and want to be gangster and want to shoot all the gun bar and shit.
Right.
Like, I've seen the negative that he contributed to the community, and I had to look like, man, what are the songs where he really talked about something and gave? And out of a 1,000-song catalog, you know, it's minute on this end.
It's like Georgia Bush.
And that do bother me. Tie My Hands.
That's what I was going to say. Tie My Hands is the only one I can think of.
And that's the thing. It's like, if I hug you once, but I slap the shit out you 1,000 times, you know, your affinity for me is you're probably going to remember me for this. And a lot of people don't, you know, as I mature, a lot of my old favorite artists, I'm now like, damn. Yeah. Like, I love you because I learned how to rap to you, but when you look at the contribution, it's like, man.
And that right there is what people couldn't accept. Not the words, but the honesty. Because hip-hop don't just sell music, it sells memory. It sells time periods in your life. It sells who you used to be. And for millions of people, Wayne ain't just a rapper. He was their youth. He was their high school. He was their first car. He was the soundtrack to their freedom before life got real, before responsibility showed up. So when somebody says they don't hear him the same no more, people take that personally, like you talking about their own history. But LaRussell wasn't attacking Lil Wayne. He was describing himself. He was describing what happens when you grow, when you evolve, when you stop listening with the same mind you had back then and start listening with the mind you have now. And that's a dangerous place to speak from, because growth don't always sound like loyalty to people who still live in the past. Wayne built the catalog that most artists will never touch. Mixtapes that changed the culture. Verses that became legendary without promotion. He didn't just participate in hip-hop, he controlled it. He made people study words different. He made people believe you could record without stopping, like your brain was a machine. But even legends exist in time, and time changes how people hear things. Not because the legend failed, but because the listener changed. And that's the part people don't want to accept, because accepting that means accepting that you changed too. LaRussell ain't say Lil Wayne wasn't great. He said out of a massive catalog, the songs that spoke directly to him on a deeper level were fewer than people expected. And that hit people hard, not because it was disrespectful, but because he was being honest. Hip-hop is built on emotion, and emotion don't always accept objectivity. Fans don't just defend the artist, they defend what the artist meant to them. They defend the version of themselves that existed during that era. They defend in their own memory. And when you understand that, you understand why the backlash came so fast and so loud. Not because LaRussell was wrong, but because he was brave enough to give his opinion out loud. Listen, the backlash didn't come from confusion. It came from protection. Because in hip-hop, there are certain names that people don't just respect, they guard them. And Wayne is one of those names, not just because of his talent, but because of what he represents. He came from nothing and became everything. He wasn't even supposed to last this long, and he did. He wasn't supposed to stay consistent, and he did. So when somebody from a new generation speaks on Wayne, people watch close, not because they afraid, but because they protect what they love. And Wayne is loved. But what made this different is LaRussell didn't back down from his words. He clarified them, and he stood on them.
What's crazy is yesterday, probably like 20, 30 platforms across Instagram and Twitter all posted the same clip of me at the same time with the same narrative. 30 niggas thinking the same thing, watching the same interview at the same time. All of a sudden, none of them have ever posted anything from me. They ain't posted when I paid rent in my hood. They ain't posted when I bought out restaurants. They ain't posted when I helped these kids. They ain't post nothing I've ever done. But randomly, they all watching this interview and decided we should post this. And the title says, LaRussell says this about Lil Wayne after signing to Jay-Z. What the fuck that got to do with anything? I just want niggas to understand what niggas be up against. Like, that's somebody with a budget in content in the narrative saying, hey, go run this. Like, niggas want to try to tarnish what a nigga built, but you can't. The problem is God chose me, nigga. Man can't stop what God put in motion. They doing everything they can because I did everything they can't, nigga. I broke the system.
He said he still loves Wayne. Wayne inspired him. He said Wayne helped shape him, but he also had to be honest with himself. And that's where the real conflict lives, between honesty and loyalty. Because sometimes honesty don't sound like loyalty to people who expect unquestioned praise. Sometimes honesty sounds like betrayal. But growth don't ask for permission, it just happens. And what people were really reacting to wasn't the criticism, it was the independence. LaRussell didn't need approval to speak, and that made people uncomfortable. Because in hip-hop, independence is power. And power makes people nervous. They start questioning your motives, your loyalty. Not because you changed, but because you stopped needing their permission to think. And that's what this moment really represents. Not disrespect, but evolution. And this is where the conversation stops being about LaRussell and starts being about everybody that's listening. People started defending Lil Wayne like they were defending family. Not because he asked them to, but because he helped shape them musically. He helped shape their identity. And when somebody touches your identity, you react like you under attack. Because that's what music does. It attaches to your life. You don't just remember the song. You remember where you were when you heard it. You remember who you were, what you was going through. And Wayne got records attached to people's survival, attached to their struggle. Records attached to people's escape, to their confidence. He was the voice when people didn't have one. So when LaRussell said what he said, it didn't just hit Wayne. It hit people who use Wayne to survive their own life. And that's why the internet turned on him so fast. Not because they didn't understand him, but because they did. And they ain't like what he made them think about. Because his words force people to do something they hate doing. Reevaluate. Reevaluate what they listen to. Reevaluate what they celebrate. Reevaluate what they defend without question. Reevaluate what they grew up on. And that's a scary place for people who built their identity on a certain artist. Because if you question the artist, you start questioning yourself. And most people don't want to do that. They want to keep their memory pure. They want to keep the feeling untouched. They want to keep the sound sacred. But time don't care about sacred. Time changes everything. At least it should. There are songs I used to love that I can't even listen to no more. Not because they got worse, but because I grew. I see life different now. I see consequences different now. I see reality different now. I see what matters differently now. And that don't mean the music failed me. It just means the music served its purpose. Music may have gotten you through a certain version of yourself, but you're not that person no more. And that's what LaRussell was really saying. He wasn't tearing Wayne down. He was acknowledging his own evolution. And people confuse that with disrespect. But there's a difference between disrespect and detachment. Disrespect is an attack. Detachment is growth. And growth don't always sound comfortable. Because when you grow, you leave certain things behind. Not out of hate, but out of necessity, out of maturity, out of a different understanding of life, a different understanding of yourself. And the reality is, every artist is a product of their time. Wayne dominated his time. He did what he was supposed to do. He inspired a generation. He built a legacy that can't be erased. And nothing LaRussell says can change that. But legacy don't freeze time. It just preserves impact. People still grow. People still change. People still evolve. And that's what this moment represents. Not the fall of a legend, but the maturity of a listener. Not the failure of an artist, but the evolution of an audience. And whether people like it or not, that process never stops. We all know when you're young, you listen to music different. You listen to it to escape. You listen for confidence. You listen for power. You listening for something that makes you feel bigger than your circumstances. You listening for something to help you survive. And Wayne gave people that. He gave people that belief. He gave people that energy. He gave people something to hold on to. But as you get older, your needs change. Your ears change. Your spirit changes. Your priorities change. You stop looking for escape and you start looking for understanding. You stop looking for distraction and start looking for truth. You stop looking for sound and start looking for meaning. And that don't mean the old music failed you. It just means it completed its job. It walked you through a season in your life, and now you in a different season. And the hardest part about growth is accepting that some things belong to who you were, not who you are now. Not because they bad, but because you different. And people struggle with that feeling because they don't want to let go of the past. They don't want to let go of the memory. They don't want to let go of who they were during that time. But you can't live in two versions of yourself at the same time. You got to choose who you are now. And that's what made this moment powerful. It wasn't about disrespect. It was about honesty, raw, uncomfortable honesty. And honesty always makes people pick sides, even when it ain't no sides to pick. Because this was never a diss. It was a reflection on how music shapes us and how time reshapes us again. Wayne is still a legend. This don't change that. But LaRussell still got the right to speak his truth too. And that don't change either. Because real growth don't require permission. It just requires honesty. And whether people accept it or not, everybody reaches that moment. That moment when you look back at who you used to be and you realize you ain't that person no more. And that's not betrayal. That's evolution. But hey, that's just my opinion. What's yours? Like, comment, subscribe. Establish Rich. I'll be back with another one. Peace.